12, my parents dumped me in foster care to travel with my sister. Now they're jobless, desperate, and reaching out, so I gave them what they deserved. Hey, Reddit. When I was 12, my parents told me they were going on a year-long trip to help my older sister pursue her dream of becoming a world-traveling musician. They said it would be a life-changing opportunity for her and that they'd make it up to me when they returned. What they didn't say was that they had no intention of coming back for me. I ended up in foster care. At first, it was temporary, or so I was told. A week turned into a month into a year. I kept expecting a call, a letter, a surprise visit, but it never came. The foster system wasn't kind. I bounced between homes, some decent, some outright cruel. By the time I was 16, I had no illusions left about family or loyalty. What hurt the most wasn't even being left behind. It was the fact that they chose my sister over me without a second thought. She was 18 at the time, legally an adult. I was still a child, but they made it clear who they believed was worth investing in. I spent my teen years angry, but that anger eventually turned into motivation. I worked every job I could, studied like my life depended on it, and aged out of the system with a scholarship in hand. I graduated college with honors in computer science, got into software development, and built a successful freelancing business. By 25, I was financially stable. By 28, I was running a six-figure consulting firm. I hadn't heard from my parents since the day they dropped me off at that government building. Not a single birthday, holiday, or check-in. It was like I had ceased to exist in their world. Then last year, out of nowhere, I got an email. It was my mom. The subject line was simply, "We miss you." I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The message was flowery and nostalgic. She talked about how much they regretted what happened, how things had been tough, how they always thought I'd understand someday. She said they were struggling jobless, living in a van with my sister who had suffered some kind of injury that left her unable to perform anymore. They were back in the States and wanted to reconnect. She even had the audacity to suggest we could be a family again. I didn't respond. 2 weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was my dad this time. His voice cracked as he said they were staying at a church shelter and just wanted to hear from me. He asked if I remembered the time he taught me to ride a bike. Said he'd give anything to go back to that day. That was the first time I cried over them in years, but I still didn't call back. It wasn't about revenge. Not yet. At first, I honestly just wanted to forget they existed again, but then something inside me changed. I started to feel this pull not to reconnect, but to make them feel what I had felt. To let them taste the life they left me in. Cold, uncertain, alone. I hired a private investigator to confirm their story. Everything checked out. They were hopping between shelters in Oregon and Northern California, barely scraping by. My sister was recovering from surgery and had no job skills outside of music. My dad had a herniated disc, and my mom was chronically ill. So I made a plan. I reached out pretending to be someone from a charity. I told them I worked with a nonprofit that supported families rebuilding after hardship and offered them temporary housing in a modest rental I owned out of state. I made the paperwork look legit, created a fake organization name, and even sent a care package with a prepaid phone. They were overjoyed. When they arrived, I had a welcome basket waiting and a note that said, "You're not forgotten." They didn't know it was from me. I watched through the hidden cameras I had installed as they cried and held each other in that tiny living room. I should have felt some warmth in my chest. I didn't. All I felt was a quiet satisfaction. Not because I helped them, but because they had no idea who was pulling the strings now. Over the next few weeks, I funded groceries, clothes, even internet so my sister could look for work online. I had the utilities under my LLC, the rental managed by a third party. They never suspected a thing. They thought some divine karma had finally come to their rescue. Then, once they started to feel comfortable, once they started referring to the place as home, I pulled it all away. The phone line was disconnected. The prepaid card stopped working. The management company called with an eviction notice citing fraudulent paperwork. The grocery delivery stopped. They were confused, desperate. I watched on camera as my mom sobbed. My dad yelling into the void, accusing the heavens of trickery. A week later, I finally showed up. I knocked on the door, and when my dad opened it, he didn't recognize me at first. Then I saw the moment it hit him. His eyes widened. His jaw clenched. My mom came to the door and gasped. She whispered my name like it was some sacred thing, like the sound of it could reverse the years. I stood there for a long time without saying a word. Finally, I said, "You left me in foster care to go chase a fantasy with her. And now you're here with nothing. And you expect me to do what? Welcome you back." My mom started crying. She reached out to touch me, but I stepped back. "You didn't just abandon me. You replaced me." My sister hobbled over from the kitchen, wincing from her surgery. She tried to speak, but I shut her down with a look. "I gave you kindness," I said. "I gave you shelter, food, a chance to feel safe, and you never even knew who was behind it because you've never really seen me, not even now." My dad tried to explain, to beg, but his words sounded hollow. Just echoes of a man who had made peace with hurting a child long ago and now couldn't live with the consequences. I turned and walked away, but not for good. Not yet. You see, part of me thought this was the closure I needed. But what I realized after that day is that the wound runs deeper than I thought. They may have lost everything, but they still think they're owed forgiveness. And I'm not done showing them what being forgotten truly feels like. After that confrontation, I thought I'd feel lighter. That seeing the confusion and devastation on their faces would finally unchain me from the years of bitterness I carried like armor. But as I drove away from that house, my house, I realized something terrifying. I didn't feel free. I felt unfinished. I watched them on the security feeds for the next few days. They didn't leave. They had nowhere to go. My sister paced the house with her cane, sometimes staring at the door as if waiting for me to walk back in. My mom barely moved from the couch. My dad drank from a bottle he must have stashed in his bag when they arrived. They were unraveling piece by piece, and it wasn't enough. I told myself this wasn't about cruelty. It was about balance. They stole a future from me. I had the right to take something back. So I went back one last time. This time I didn't knock. I used my key. They were all in the living room when I walked in. My mom sat up, hope flashing in her tired eyes. My dad looked away. My sister looked like she was bracing for impact. I didn't waste time. You know who I am. You know what I've done. So let's stop pretending this is some cosmic mistake. You didn't get lucky. You got me. I paused. Looking around the room, they turned into a nest of denial. I paid for every light switch in this place. Every bite of food, every shower, every blanket. And I did it while you lived comfortably believing someone else had saved you. That God or karma or some faceless system came through. No. It was me. The kid you dumped in a stranger's house without a plan. My mom started sobbing. Again, felt rehearsed at this point. We didn't mean to leave you like that. She said, we thought it would only be temporary. We were gonna come back. But things got complicated. Money ran out and we didn't know how to reach you. I snapped. You didn't try. You picked her over me and then you vanished. You had every tool to find me. The system had my info. I stayed in the same damn state. I used my real name. I never moved more than 10 miles from where you left me, and not once did you look. My dad stood up, face red. We made a mistake. A big one. But we were doing our best. You don't know what it was like. I cut him off. I know exactly what it was like. I lived it. They didn't argue after that. They just sat there. For the first time, they looked defeated. Truly, the illusions were gone. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. I threw it on the table. What's that? My sister asked. That, I said, is the deed to this house. It's under my LLC, and the lease is officially terminated. You have 1 week to get out. Her voice cracked, and then what? We're back on the street. I looked at her long and hard. You remember when I called social services at 13 because I hadn't eaten in 2 days? And the woman on the phone asked me if I had a place to sleep and I said, barely. She blinked confused. No. Of course not. Because you were on stage somewhere playing songs while I was counting slices of bread. I turned to the door, but my mom's voice stopped me. Please just tell me what you want from us. I hesitated. I wanted justice. I said, I wanted you to feel what I felt, and maybe I got that. But the truth is, what I really wanted was something you can't give me. Time, a childhood, family. I turned back to face them one last time. But I also wanted you to see me. The man I became without you. The men you left behind who didn't just survive. He built something. I wanted you to look at me and understand what you threw away. They were silent. Not because they didn't have words, but because the weight of mine left no room for theirs. I left without saying goodbye. I terminated the lease officially. I cut the utilities. I even sold the furniture. A week later, the house was empty. I don't know where they went. I stopped watching. Sometimes I think about that last look my mom gave me, like she was mourning a death. Not hers, not mine, but the idea of who we used to be, who we could have been. But I buried that family a long time ago. Now I'm moving forward. I've started mentoring kids who age out of the system like I did. I fund scholarships quietly, anonymously. No expectations, no illusions, because I know what it feels like to be forgotten. And I've learned that the only way to heal is to stop waiting for an apology that's never going to be enough. They lost me, but I didn't lose myself. That's the real ending to the story, not revenge, not closure, freedom. And thank you so much for watching till here. See you soon in the next video.